Jumping right back into the action now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, we look at my top 5 best rookie performances from week 1. It was kind of hard to pick. There was some other players that I was pretty impressed with outside of these top 5 that I decided to kind of shorten this list down to. But, I think these guys really made the difference in some of their games. And just jumping straight into it now, starting with the number 5 spot, I actually have the tackle from not the San Francisco 49ers, the tackle from the New Orleans Saints, that being Talaise Fuaga, their rookie right tackle for the Saints. Like I mentioned, there were some issues with this position, right? If you follow the Saints at some point this year, you know that Ryan Ramczyk was pretty much done for the entire year with his injury, and also they didn't re-sign Andreas Pete. So tackle was certainly a position of need for this squad, and they went out, they drafted Talaise Fuaga out of Oregon State at pick number 14, and he already looks like he has come in to save the New Orleans Saints at this spot. On Sunday, they did play the Carolina Panthers, which is the biggest point that I have to take away from Fuaga, because the Panthers, they're not the toughest of competitions, right? So they kind of deducted some points for him, but nevertheless, it was still impressive because he led all rookies with a 94% pass block win rate. And what's even more impressive was that he is making the transition from right tackle at Oregon State to now playing left tackle in New Orleans. He's never started a game for Oregon State, I should say, at left tackle in all his time there. So now making the switch from one side to the other, it might seem simple, but if you ask any tackle, it's extremely difficult with just how you use your hands, your feet movement, and just everything that goes with it. It's like writing with your other hand, essentially. And, making that transition and playing very well off of that, just right off of the bat in his first start. I had to throw him in here, but also it couldn't be higher than 5 because, the Panthers, they were one of the worst teams in week 1. So, impressive, but, the Panthers, not the toughest of competitions for Talaise Fuaga in his first game. Then moving on to number 4, I have the Steelers player that I mentioned. I had to throw him in here to give some love to already Fuaga as an offensive lineman, but to continue that trend and talk about the Steelers rookie center coming in from West Virginia and starting right off of the bat. An injury to Nate Herbig in the preseason had Pittsburgh have to start their rookie center with 2 new quarterbacks as well is not really a recipe that you want to see for any team. You already have new tendencies with whichever quarterback is going to play, and for a rookie especially to be comfortable with 2 new quarterbacks coming in and to learn the entire offense as well, call out plays, protections and whatnot and things like that come with being a center. It's a lot. It's a lot on the plate of Zach Frazier coming in right away, but I thought he did a very good job of handling everything in the first game. There were those issues with the snaps still from preseason, right? You saw the fumbles that Justin Fields and Frazier had in the preseason, which I feel like everybody freaked out about or over freaked out about in the preseason. But again, now in the regular season popping up, now's the time where you can freak out because that just can't happen in the regular season. So they have to figure that out, honestly. It can happen in the first week, but if it's a continual thing, it's not something that Mike Tomlin is going to be too happy about, like most or every coach would be. So that's something that was really the only negative that I saw, because against Atlanta, Zach Frazier didn't allow a single pressure, a single hit, or a single hurry in any of his dropbacks. The amount of pancakes that I saw out of Zach Frazier was really impressive, and like Talaise Fuaga and kind of incorporating the level of opponent that he was going up against, I considered that with Zach Frazier. He looked good, not only moving around and being pretty athletic at the center position, but also going up against Grady Jarrett is not an easy task by any means. He was a guy, or is a guy still, obviously, considered one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL, one of the best players on the Falcons defense overall. He got a sack in that game from the edge, not really going through Zach Frazier. So he did very well against Grady Jarrett, and that's why I had to put Zach Frazier just above Fuaga. He did a great job in his first game, and now I feel like he's only going to get better, like most rookies do. That first impression is always important, and Zach Frazier and Fuaga both passed the test on the offensive line. Then, moving into number 3, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars rookie wide receiver, Brian Thomas Jr., coming in here at number 3 because they were definitely needing some more X-factor, game-changing talent at the wide receiver position, and I think that's what any team was going to get with Brian Thomas because I really liked him coming out of LSU. I always thought in this process of the draft and the combine and everything, I always thought that if Malik Neighbors wasn't at LSU, Brian Thomas would be looked at so much greater. There would be so much value more to Brian Thomas, and potentially his stats could have been even crazier. I say that, but he still recorded 17 touchdowns in that last year at LSU, so there was that potential there. I just feel like it was a little bit overlooked with everybody gushing over Malik Neighbors. Not to take anything away from him because he's that good, but, Brian Thomas is right there, very capable of being any team's number 1, and I think we saw a little glimpse of that here against the Miami Dolphins. They didn't end up winning the game, but Brian Thomas in this game, he led all wide receivers with 4 receptions, 4 targets, and 47 yards, and a touchdown also for the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Jaguars passing game, that was virtually non-existent. I think him kind of showing out is more of an indictment against their offense, really, than it is, not being impressed with just 4 receptions for 47 yards. It might not look impressive, but in the context of how well the entire offense did in the passing game, I think that's very good to kind of stand out like that, and his touchdown was certainly a big one at that point of the game for the Jaguars as well. And I think just having Brian Thomas in here at number 3, I was really thinking about him showing his potential already to be their number 1 receiver. I think he has the full package, the route running, the hands, the contested catches, everything, the separation and everything like that. With the pressure that he just has, trying to step into this light of essentially replacing Calvin Ridley, with having that pressure on his shoulders and already showing some potential that he is very capable of doing that, I was very impressed with that and had to put him in at the number 3 spot. But then at number 2 was a guy that I've been on this show talking about, very big fan of him, the Eagles defensive back Quinyon Mitchell. I thought he would play more in the slot to start off, but against the Green Bay Packers, I saw a lot of him on the outside corner position opposite of Darius Slay. And in that game, he had 2 pass breakups, 5 tackles against the Green Bay Packers, which do have a good group of wide receivers. You saw it on display with Jalen Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks, and Christian Watson. I think Watson was the only one that scored, if my memory serves me right. But there was just a lot of drops, and they weren't on their best day, which I guess helped out the Eagles secondary a little bit more. But Quinyon Mitchell got himself in great spots. I thought he had great coverage on all those times he was left one-on-one against Christian Watson down the field on a couple times. He was right there, always in the back pocket, always attached at the hip of these wide receivers, and I liked his aggressive demeanor and his, you could call it cockiness, his arrogance, but I think you need that as a corner, and he was very good at doing that, very aggressive at the point of attack when any throw came his way. Of course, there were some passes caught on him. He is still a rookie, but overall, I like the character that he brought, the performance as well. I think more and more he's going to stack this up, and usually also with young corners, I mentioned this aggressive nature to him. A lot of times they get called for holding or defensive pass interference or anything like that. I didn't really see any of that in his game, which again gives me more reason to believe that Quinyon Mitchell, one of the biggest steals, if not the biggest steal in the first round for the Eagles, to have him opposite of Darius Slay is a great duo to have in 2024. And then lastly here, to go over the best rookie performance, I think undoubtedly it has to be Xavier Worthy. In that game against the Baltimore Ravens, he had 2 touchdowns in his first game. You saw right away, as soon as he touched the ball, jet sweep, he sees a hole. You see the hole where in most cases any guy would probably be touched. He might have to break a tackle. He flew through that hole so fast that nobody came close to even touching him or even coming close to touching him. That's the speed on display, the combine record speed that he had. Also, just the threat that he brings, obviously with that speed, you have to be aware where he is at all times, and adding him with Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice, who looked outstanding in this game. I think having a rookie like this already show you close to his full skill set, close to his full potential in his first game, not really struggling with anything that greatly. I think he really impressed me the most, even though he might not have gotten the most targets or anything like that. I think the impact that he brings to this Super Bowl winning team already has left me the most impressed out of anybody already. That's why we hold the Chiefs to such a high regard already. They look so much better than they did last year. So Xavier Worthy is the best rookie performance out of any rookie in Week 1 in the NFL. Leave your guys' thoughts on what you think of my list, and also provide any insight on any disagreements or comments that you'd like to make on that list. But that's not the last list we're going to talk about. I have one more thing that I wanted to bring up here, a panic rating for a couple of these 0-1 teams after Week 1. We look at about 8 of them, 7 of them if we have time, and we go through my level of panic that I have in this team after losing in Week 1 and their circumstances and everything. I'll give those out and I'll reveal those when we return after our last break, coming up in just a few seconds.